All right, 7th graders, we are going to be factoring today once again. However, if you notice in this title, we now have a letter that's in front of the letter. So what does that mean? Well, A is our coefficient. So we now are going to have a coefficient of the x squared term. We're going to have a number that's going to be preceding the x squared. So today, what are we going to learn? Here it is. You are going to learn how to factor ax squared plus bx plus c, and we're going to use factoring to solve real-life problems. So, how do we factor? Well, in section 7.5, you factored polynomials in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, but a was 1. So a was always 1, so we didn't have to worry about that. To factor polynomials in this form, where a is not 1, we're going to first look for the GCF of the terms of the polynomial and then factor further if possible. This is huge. I see so many students make this mistake, and it's not wrong, but it's just not factored completely. So in example 1, when I say factor, there are two types of things that you're going to be looking for. The first thing is a GCF. The second thing are binomials. Always check for the GCF. Always check for a GCF. Repeat it with me. Always check for what? A GCF. Do not ever forget to check for the greatest common factor. So in this example, we have 5x squared plus 15x plus 10. We want to factor out a GCF. In this case, it'd be 5. So we're going to factor out a 5, which will give us x squared plus 3x plus 2. And now we're going to factor that into binomials. So we're going to bring down the 5. Don't forget to bring down that 5. And so now we start by factoring just like we did last section. X times x would give me x squared. These are both plus, so that means my binomials are both plus. And what times what would give me 2? Well, that would be a positive 2 and a positive 1. So let's see if this will work. Check your middle terms. Inside terms are 2x. Outside terms are 1x. That does give me my 3x. So my answer is 5 times x plus 2 multiplied by x plus 1. So 5 multiplied by x plus 2 multiplied by x plus 1 would be your answer. Now in this case, in example 2, we're going to factor the exact same thing. However, let's look at A. 4x squared plus 13x plus 3. Do we have a GCF? We don't. So because we don't have a GCF, you're going to go right to your binomials. Now this is not as easy. When you have a coefficient of your x squared term that is not 1, you're going to have to guess twice. Now there are many different combinations. For example, 4, you could pick 1 and 4. You could pick 4 and 1. You could pick 2 and 2. 3, you could pick 3 and 1 and 1 and 3. So only one combination of all of these factors works. It's up to you to determine what it is. So we're going to go to the first term, 4x squared. And I'm just going to guess 2x and 2x. We know these are both going to be pluses. And what multiplied by what gives you 3? Well, it'll be 3 and 1. So in this case, we have to check inside, outside. That gives me, inside will give me 6x. Outside, 2x times 1 gives me 2x. That gives me a middle term of 8x. Well, I want 13x. It doesn't work. Now, normally, this is where I would actually tell you to erase this. But since we're doing this for the first time, I'm just going to cross this off and try another example. So what I always would suggest is before you pick something else, switch them around. Now in this case, 2x plus 3, if you've switched around the 3 and the 1, you're actually going to get the same thing here because both of these are 2. You would still get 3x, or 3 times 2x, which is 6x. 2x times 1, which is 2x. That still would not work. So now we have to go back and guess something else. Well, we know only 1 and 3 are going to work for my factors of 3. But what else can I pick as my factors of 4? I can pick 4x and 1x. So inside, outside. Inside gives me 1x. Outside gives me 12x. That does give me 13x. So my answer would be the binomials 4x plus 1 multiplied by x plus 3. Now notice it took us 3 guesses. We could have actually had 4 guesses here if we wanted to. You could have guessed it right on the first try. You could have guessed it right after 4 tries. But it's completely up to you how you do it. Now once again, I'm going to show you this little table here on how to do this. And I'll erase it here in a second. But if you look at this table, here were the factors of 4. Here were the factors of 3. I could have written this numerous ways. And only one of them gave me a middle term of 3x. And this is where you do inside, outside. Check to see if it gives you it, and it does work. Now, you don't have to actually do a table. But this is actually what you're doing when you're guessing and checking every time. And that's okay. So I'm going to move that off to the side. And let's go to the next example. Step 1. Look to see if there's a GCF. There's not. So now, let's figure out what we need to multiply. So I'm going to start off with 3x squared. I'm going to pick the factors 3x multiplied by x. Well, what 2 terms are going to give me positive 2, but gives me a negative when I combine them? That's going to be a negative and a negative. And I'm going to pick 2 and 1. Does that give me a middle term of negative 7x? Well, let's check. Inside gives me negative 2x. Outside terms multiplied together gives me negative 3x. That does not give me negative 7x. So I'm actually going to just switch them around. Minus 1, minus 2. Outside terms give me negative 6x. Inside terms give me negative 1x. That does give me negative 7x. Therefore, this is my answer. Once again, you could actually FOIL these, multiply these 2 binomials together to see if this will give you your answer. But to save the time, you can just check inside and outside to see if it works. In example number 3, write this problem down. 2x squared minus 5x minus 7. 2x squared minus 5x minus 7. There is no GCF. None. So we have to factor this. What 2 binomials would we get? Well, let's see here. We could guess 2x and x. Now remember, I want to know what 2 terms multiply together to give me negative 7. Well, that means I have to have a minus and a plus, or a plus and a minus. It's imperative that you put these the same way. Or put these the correct way, because if one negative or positive are off, it'll be wrong. So what 2 terms multiply to give me negative 7? Well, I could say positive 7 and negative 1. Once again, we always know that my first and last terms are correct, but we check that middle term. Do I get a negative 5x? I don't. My inside terms multiply to give me 7x. My out terms, negative 2x. That gives me positive 5x. I want negative 5x. Here's the trick. If the only thing that you need is to change the sign, then all you do is switch the signs around. And in this case, we get now negative 7x plus 2x, which gives me the correct middle term of negative 5x. In example 4. All right, this is a key concept. I actually want you to make sure you definitely make note of this. If your first term has a coefficient of a negative, bam, right here, negative, bam, negative, 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 negative. Don't ever forget this. You factor out a negative. Now you look at this and say 4, 8, and 5. There's no GCF. You're right. But the first term is negative. You're going to take out a negative 1 or just a negative. So if we take out a negative, we're going to get 4x squared plus 8x minus 5. And from there, we write our binomials. Now, we have a lot of terms here. Actually, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 different guesses for this. One of them is right. We either guess right on the first try, second try. We could guess right on the 6th try. So what 2 factors of 4 do we want to use? I'm going to pick 2x and x, or 2x and 2x. Because this is a negative 5, only a minus and a plus would give me that. I'm going to guess my 2 factors of 5 as negative 5 and 1. Let's see if this works. Now the negative up front we're going to ignore, so we don't even worry about that. Inside terms multiplied together gives me negative 10x. Outside terms multiplied together gives me 2x. That gives me what? That gives me a negative 8x. Wrong, doesn't work. We want a positive 8x right here. I have a negative 8x. So what is the only thing I turn around? I just move the minus and the plus. And if you check this, it would work this time to give me a positive 8x. So my answer would be negative times 2x plus 5 multiplied by 2x minus 1. Now, I put these up here as extra examples. If you want to go over these, you can. In about 10 seconds, the answers are going to pop up, but you can actually try them if you want. Pause the video. And there are all of the answers. So here's our last example. How do you put all of this in a real-life problem? Well, the length of a rectangular game reserve is 1 mile long, or 1 mile longer than twice the width. The area of the reserve is 55 square miles. What is the width of the reserve? Well, we have a reserve. Let's draw a picture. The length is 1 mile longer than twice the width. So let's say the width is W. Well, the length is going to be 1 mile longer than twice the width, so that would be 2W plus 1. Since we're talking about area, we're going to take length times width. Well, length times width would be W times 2W plus 1. And that area would give me 55 square miles. And right off the bat, you have a quadratic equation. Now, step 1. If this was 0, you could take both of these, set them equal to 0, and put W equals 0 and 2W plus 1 equals 0. But it's not equal to 0, so we have to make it equal to 0. Step 1, distribute. 2W squared plus W. I'm going to subtract the 55, move it over to the left, and that makes everything equal to 0. And now it's a quadratic equation. We can solve it by factoring. And now if we solve this by factoring, step 1, do I have a GCF? Is there something I can take out? And the answer would be no. And now I have binomials. What should I put as my 2 factors of 2W squared? Now, before we start, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 8 possibilities for your answer here. Only one of them is correct. Your persistence in getting the correct answer is key here. After 5 or 6 tries, if you're still not right, don't give up. Keep going. So I'm going to pick 2W and W. Well, I want negative 55. So I could pick negative 55 and 1. I could pick 55 and negative 1. A little hint, since the middle term is a small number, I would not pick 55 and 1. So let's pick -11 and +5. So in this case, my inside term gives me -11W. My outside term gives me 10W. That gives me -W. Well, I want a positive W. So that means I need to switch my signs around. Whoops, I did not need to put an arrow. But since now I can't delete it, we're just going to leave that there. So this would be +11 and -5. And if I check it, it would work. And so now to solve this, we set both of these equal to 0. Remember, the shortcut is opposite of the back divided by the front. So the opposite of the back, 11, divided by the front, that would give me a -11/2. Or if you solve this, you would also get -11/2. And here I get W equals 5. The problem is, I can't have a negative value for a length. So the only thing is going to be, this worked, is the width of 5. So the width is 5. Now if I wanted to find the length, you plugged it in, it would be 11. So the width is 5 miles.